Good morning, everyone. I don't understand Finnish. I apologize, but I did get the energy level from Anna Marie's presentation. So, very happy to be here. What I'll do for the next 45 minutes is to walk you through a few thoughts that we have been developing for a long period of time. You know, I joke about the fact that 15, 16 years ago, when we launched our first AI-based applications in this space of customer experience, customer engagement, I remember the kind of response we would get, which would be very curious, very interesting, and not something that we plan to do now. And over time, we have seen the adoption of artificial intelligence. And now it's at a point where we all want to understand more about how to use the combination of digital capabilities and artificial intelligence to deliver better customer experience. So let's spend the next few minutes looking at the market and some of the trends that I'm sure all of you are in the middle of. You're experiencing it. You're driving change in your respective organizations. It's fair to say that all of us now live digital, some very happily and some reluctantly. Some of us are trying to get away from digital because it's too much. We are trying to detox. We are trying to get off the grid. Right? We want to avoid living digital sometimes. But the fact is that it's all around us, not just as consumers, but also in the business. And in any business, and most of you, I'm sure, are part of large organizations, the way you see the evolution of digital capabilities in a large organization is it starts from the consumer first. It starts from the customer. The customer drives the change. They demand that you serve them, that you deliver capabilities, that you deliver experiences digitally. So the brand is the first point of impact of digital, and you can see that. That then makes its way into the internal process of the existing way businesses operate. And this is important. The first thing you do when you have an existing business and you get a new technology wave coming is you adapt. You adapt your existing process, your existing way of doing things using the new technology. And so process changes start to get more and more digital, and we'll talk about that in customer experience. It starts to affect the way you hire, the way you train, the way you incentivize, the way you promote, the way you retire. The kind of people who will succeed in the new world start to change, and we all are aware of that, and most of us are able to adapt to that. Then the big next wave hits, which is new products. Your products change. You're not just selling the old products because the new product has to be aware and leverage new technologies like digital. And so you see connected capabilities, IoT, and all the rest that you're seeing in the market now. And finally, what I'd call the transformational impact. And that is your business model changes. And that's where the biggest risk and the biggest opportunities are. As I walked into this beautiful area, this conference area, I saw a lot of television screens full of things like new age companies are going to be 10x more efficient than old companies. Well, it's not possible to take existing process and make it 10x more efficient. Well, maybe in some cases, but mostly not. What is possible is you change the way you do things. You just do something totally different. So a Facebook or an Uber and all these guys that we are all well aware of do not play by the same rules that most of the other organizations play because they are built on a different business model. And that's how 10x efficiency comes about. What we're going to talk about today is not about creating new businesses. That's not what we're going to talk about today, though I'd be happy to talk to you about that later, but that's not what we are here for today. What we are here for is to talk about the impact that your business is going through and how we take advantage of digital and AI in the first bucket of the brand, process, and people. So we all know about these things. I will not get into talking about the big numbers in the world of displacement of human labor. We are all living it. We will go through it. I'll focus on the specifics. And the specific is that in 4 years, now this is not something that will happen with 100% certainty. We all understand that there is a margin of error to this. But the trends are clear. And the trend is that large businesses, or small, but here we are focusing on the large ones, who are delivering customer experience are going to be using new technologies for bulk of their customer interactions in this time period. From where it is sitting now, about 10 to 15% is digital, machine learning, chatbot, AI. That number of augmentation of those interactions will be up to 70%. What does that mean for us? What that means is if we are leaders in the area of business or technology, that we need to master how to take advantage of these new capabilities for our customer experience teams. That's the impact. The second thing is more new things to worry about. More new things to worry about. So the rate of change goes up. If you go into a large customer service organization today, mostly you would say they are testing anywhere between 2 to 5 new capabilities in large companies. They'll be playing with some virtual assistants, they're playing with some machine learning, they're playing with some knowledge management. We're talking about taking that number up 2 to 3x. So lots of new capabilities that are popping up all over. And you and we, working with you, have to help you be able to deal with and take advantage of all those new capabilities in a continuous way, not in a disruptive way. You cannot stop your existing business. You have to run your existing operation, and you have to figure out how to change and adapt to these new things. And finally, the phone is going to become less of the percentage, as a percentage of your total customer engagement contact. But it is not going to go away, which means that you need to have an omni-channel strategy, meaning irrespective of the channel of contact, you want to be able to deliver the appropriate connected experience. So technology has to become invisible. Today, it's very visible. When you engage with your customers and consumers, the first thing they see is the technology experience. And what you want to do is to get away from that and make technology invisible and make the experience memorable. So that's kind of the trend in the market that we see, that Gartner is talking about, and that we believe we can help you take advantage of. So let's try to make the whole notion of AI more specific in the area of customer engagement. We look at it in 4 buckets. The first is what all of us, I believe, do today in our businesses is analytics. Most of us do it. We collect data, we analyze it, we try to understand it, we use those insights to improve our business. Very obvious. What is different with AI? The difference is you can learn far more quickly and far more reliably without going through the manual process of cleaning data, linking it together, spending weeks and weeks of time trying to understand it and then visualize it. That becomes less relevant. There are technologies in artificial intelligence that you're all aware of that will drive prediction and insight in real time. They may not be 100% accurate, but they are accurate enough. And we'll talk about how to match the right tools to the right task. And that's critical, because you don't want to apply a technology that, let's say, is 70% accurate to a situation where failure is catastrophic. You can't do that, right? The second thing is understanding language. This is an interesting area, and especially where we're talking to, let's say I'm speaking to all of you, where we are very aware of the fact that there are multiple languages in play. Language understanding tends to be a big area of opportunity and concern. Hey, will your tool work in this language? Will it understand the nuances? Turns out that with new generation of technology in AI now, with machine learning, language becomes less relevant. I'm sure all of you are aware of the whole Google Translate story. How many of you have read the sort of story behind the Google Translate product in the last 1 year? Seen it? Heard it? Okay. So do you know, for those who haven't heard, that when, and by the way, we are not connected in that project in any way, but it's very interesting to understand the impact of machine learning on something as fundamental as translation. We all understand translation. So it turns out that the first generation of Google Translate was based on technologies in this category. And in the last year, they switched to this. Simple. I'm just trying to simplify the problem here. So they used to do what I'd call the technology was designed to understand, try to do parsing and processing and understanding of natural language. So the specific language and the terms in it matter. That's a very expensive and difficult way to do things. But that was the best they could do at that point. In the background, they collected a lot of data, because people used Google Translate on that version of the product. And from all that data, they started learning using this. And at some point, the singularity point happened, the point of singularity when learning, machine learning becomes smarter than human insight. And that happened in that particular domain. And so the next version of Google Translate is based on machine learning, which means you don't care what the language is. They're just bits for you. You're looking at patterns. Now, that doesn't mean that you can apply that technique in every possible business scenario. But what it does mean is it's a very powerful proof point that given the right use cases, you can apply these new technologies in areas where there was a lot of effort and cost in the past. The third piece, so I kind of discussed 2 and 4, but the third piece, which is equally interesting, is reasoning. And that has to do with process and problem solving. And problem solving and process is not something you can do with pure machine learning. It's not possible, at least not today. It may be in the future. So what you'd end up doing is capturing the expertise of your organization, which is essentially process, problem solving. How do you resolve a customer issue by guiding them? How do you follow the right process for the right kind of question? That can be captured very effectively and driven through an AI reasoning engine to deliver a tool that can help customers solve their own problems, or agents help customers solve the problem. So those are the 4 areas that we see very powerful and interesting applications of AI in customer engagement. One quick point on this, on data. Data is interesting because it's been sort of the back office conversation for a very long time. Most business leaders don't care about data. They care about nice graphs and charts and pictures, right? Most of us don't see the real data. Turns out that that's where the real value is. All the data that your organizations are collecting today on digital interactions, contact center interactions, store interactions, most of it just sits around. Just sits around. Very little of it gets used in improving your business, very little. And the reason for it is that the effort required in getting all that data together, cleaning it up, linking it, visualizing it, it's a lot of effort. And meanwhile, the problem moves on. You've got a new set of problems, so now you've got a new set of questions. What machine learning is doing now is letting you take advantage of that data without worrying about making it super clean, making it all linked up properly. You can still get insights in near real time. So on a daily basis, you can get insights into your contact center. Where are the bottlenecks? Where is the customer experience failing? Where is my cost of care going up? Where are the product issues where I'm getting long or lots of escalations? I can get that on near real-time basis now. That's the difference between the application of new technologies like AI in this world versus the traditional model of, let's just collect the data, clean it up, spend a month looking at it, and then in the quarterly reviews, we'll walk through the process. That's sort of the difference. Okay, one more point I want to make, and then I'll jump into a customer case study that I think will be of interest to you, and that is match the tool to the task. This is a cautionary note, but also just a pragmatic note. And all of you will agree with this, I think, because we are all in the business of business. We want to make sure that if we are applying new techniques, that we are not, it's like, I gave an example to someone saying, you teach a kid how to ride a bicycle, okay? We've all been through it. If you think of teaching a kid how to ride a bicycle, there are two ways you can do it. I hope most of us do it the second way. The first way is you give them the bicycle and say, you know what, go figure it out. Some kids learn. But if we are responsible parents, we tend to help them. And so we are there when the bike wobbles, we kind of hold them a little bit. And so they start to feel comfortable with trying out new things, and then over time you just let it go and it runs. It sounds like a strange analogy, but new technologies get introduced into organizations the same way. There are some organizations that will sort of start up a project on AI. It's disconnected from the rest of the organization. There's some part of customer care, maybe it's a chatbot you launch or something new, totally disconnected from the rest of the organization. You get some operational experience on it. Guess what? Some of it works, but most of it doesn't. That's the nature of new technology. But when that happens, and if your customers get that bad experience and they don't get the hand-holding around it, they reject it. And then you say, this doesn't work. The way you do it is you create a connected platform environment where if you're introducing something like a chatbot and the results that are coming out of that experience for the customer are not the right quality, that you can catch hold of that experience in real time and escalate it nicely to a human-assisted environment. Yes, it's more expensive, but you've just created a safety net. And that allows your technology team, your business team to experiment with that new experience. So connected platforms allow you to enable more experimentation of new technology. That's sort of the gist of this. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're talking about financial services. Let's say you're a big let's say you're an insurance company, just for argument's sake. And someone calls in for a claim. You could apply AI to that, and you could come up with a notion of, well, what is the likelihood that there's fraud here, let's say. That's one thing. Those are all interesting things. But you would not let that AI tool drive the entire dialogue based on its own machine learning. That would be very risky, because if you get it wrong, you get into compliance problems, you get into governmental regulations, all that. However, the same AI tool could be very valuable in an environment like a website where you're offering proactive chat assistance. I don't know how many of you offer chat on your website. I presume some of you do, right? Some of you do? Okay, good. So there's this idea of offering proactive chat, right? And what are the rules that you have to set up to offer proactive chat? Think about that for a second. We all set up, so for instance, in the eGain software or any other software, there are business rules you can set up. So you can say, the shopping cart is this value, the customer's been around for this long on the website, and they're trying to get out of the page, pop something. Okay, that's good. But surely that's not a perfect business logic. It's not. It's just your guess as to what is going to work. So to be able to capture that rule in logic is extremely hard because it depends on so many variables. Perfect place for an AI tool to come in and suggest when to offer proactive chat. If you're wrong, that's okay. The risk is low. So there are business situations where you can apply these technologies with confidence, and there are business situations where you have to be careful about deploying the same capability. That's what I mean by matching the tool to the task. And that works very well if you have an environment where you have a connected platform. Okay, so I'm going to speed it up. How much time do I have? Anyone?
20 minutes.
Thank you. Oh, I was looking for you. You said you'd be at the back. Sorry. Thank you. So this is the new world we are all living in, we are all aware of, so I'm not going to spend time on it. But I am going to talk about a simple way of thinking about delivering the right sort of experience. And that is the ABC we talk of experience. So the first is the associates, your workforce, the ones who are working in your customer service organizations, your contact centers, your retail stores. These are the younger folk, people who have been in the digital world most of their life. They have a different behavior pattern. And the most important behavior pattern that is different between them and people who are older is that they do not remember things. They just look it up. It's a huge difference. It actually is very good. It's like saying, you know, I don't know how to run a slide rule. My dad did. That doesn't make him smarter, right? This is a big difference. The tools they expect in the workforce now, in their work environment, are tools that are similar to what they do in their normal life. They need to be able to get the information. And a lot of business organizations that we see are still geared toward the needs that we have been used to, which is train people, train them on the product information, train them till they die. Get all the information in their head so that at the time of contact, they know exactly what to do. That's the way we run businesses. But the workforce has changed. And that's a big opportunity and a challenge for most of us, is how do you make that, this is your target team member who you need to make successful. Businesses, obviously, we're all in it. We want to drive faster clock speed on improvements, all the good stuff. The customer, we are all aware of. The missing bit in most cases we see is the focus understanding of the need of the workforce, the agents. That's where we see a lot of gap today. Most businesses are quite smart about their own understanding of what they need and what their customers need. That part is covered. So if you look at the ABC of that, that's our simple math. What we believe is when you deliver good experience, you have to balance the experience of these three stakeholders. You have to improve the experience of all three. You have to keep that in mind. So for instance, focusing on just customer experience in a way that when the escalation comes to the contact center, the agent doesn't know what the heck just happened on the website is a huge problem. Creates tremendous dissatisfaction. Another example would be the customer is calling in and saying, I've just seen something on your website, or I've seen it on my mobile app. And the agent goes, OK, I got to look at my SharePoint. Don't really see it here. Sorry, I don't know what to say. So what happens is answer shopping. Smart consumers will call. They'll call 3 times. They'll go to the mobile app and ask 3 times. They'll go to social media and complain, all at the same time. And they'll get the best answer, and they'll pick that one. Right? So businesses suffer because of that, because the experience does not optimize across the 3 stakeholders. Okay, so this is my last non-customer story point. And whatever we are helping you do, or whatever you are doing in your own organization, you can break it down into these 3 layers. First is take your existing business process and run it better. Second is change those business processes. And the third is throw them out and do something totally different. Now, they come with different stages of risk and reward. We all understand that. Depends on the maturity model of your organization. Some organizations are more mature in terms of advanced, in terms of progress, in trying to take advantage of all these new technologies. And some are not. It's OK. We just need to figure out where you are and what the journey should look like as a result. Let me now, and I'll skip this part because we've already talked about, I think Anna Marie talked about some of the capabilities of eGain. And even though I did not understand the words, but I'm confident that the point was made. So I want to talk to you about this story because it's a transformational story, and this is a story that has been shared by the customer, our customer, with our audience, at our Digital AI Summit 2 years ago in the UK. And this is a story which is still very relevant, and since then we have done more with EE. EE is the, used to be, the upstart, sort of the new kid on the block in the mobile business in UK. Now they are part of British Telecom, so they've become the big guys now. But they used to be the quick guys. And what they did with eGain is really the second and third level impact. If you think about the run, change, transform that I showed you earlier, what you're going to hear today in this next 10 minutes is around the change and transform. That doesn't mean they haven't done run, but I'm saving that story because that's not necessarily that interesting at this point. So I'll run through this quickly. Here was the two problems they had. And I'm representing at this point EE. Sorry, I just want to make sure that you understand, and that's why I've kept the look and feel the same way as they presented. By the way, there's a full video of this available on the eGain website, them making the point, not me. So you can go in and look at the bigger story on our website as well. So number one thing they were dealing with, they had 10,000 contact center agents. They have more now, but at that time they had 10,000 contact center agents, and they had 550 retail stores. So that's the business need. The problem they had was variation in performance. What does that mean? Very simple. Some agents do a brilliant job for some contacts, but most agents don't do a very good job for most contacts. And that's the classic problem of customer service organizations. There are these superstar agents who can solve any problem, especially in certain domains. But for the vast majority of agents, they struggle with response and problem resolution. And again, we go back to the old tool we have, training. Just train them as much as we can. And what happens as a result? The stress levels in these organizations is so high that these agents move on. So the attrition rates are 40% a year on average, which means that you spend 6 months training someone and they leave you after a year. It's a vicious cycle. That's what they're trying to solve. And that's the bell curve of performance that you see everywhere. What they noticed was, not surprising, all of you noticed this, I'm sure, is that they quartiled, so 25% blocks of their agent performance. And they saw something very obvious, which is that the new agents were really struggling. After 6 months of training, they'll train them for 6 months, give them a glide path to get competent, 6 months. After that, they treat them as regular agents. They measure them. They incentivize them. They do all the regular things, and they find they're really the worst off. The second problem they had was lots of content, lots of knowledge. They had 4 knowledge tools, different companies that brought together, but there was no single source of truth, which meant that the adoption was very poor in the contact center of knowledge tools. It was inconsistent knowledge, and they had no analytics. They had no automation on analytics, so they did not know who was using what and what was working and not working. That's the classic problem in every service organization we go to. People just don't know. So you're guessing. If you know what works and what doesn't work, then you can improve the stuff that doesn't work. But you're never confident of that. Most of the time spent in analytics is around counting volume of contacts, not the details of what exactly is happening inside the contacts. So what did they do? So they took a very interesting approach, which I think is, again, the transformational impact comes from questioning the way you do things. And this is the difference. We have many customers, and I'm not trying to judge our customers. We love all our customers. But some customers will, based on the maturity model, take this approach, which is to question the way they are running their service organization. And they said, let's treat process and response and resolution with the seriousness that we think it deserves. Not just throw a bunch of content at our agents and say, figure it out, read the manual and figure it out. We'll train you for another 3 months. NHS, for those of you who don't know, is National Health Service in the UK, which is the government-run healthcare program. So they called it Albert. You know the name of the person, obviously. If you say Einstein, you have to pay Einstein's trademark ownership in a university in Israel. So people say it, Albert, and you guess the Einstein part. Guided knowledge. So they implemented guided knowledge. This is the combination of AI and knowledge from eGain. What it does is, and you will see that if you haven't in the demonstration, is that it combines the ability to find the right content, the answer, as well as guiding the conversation for the agent through a series of interactive response and questions, that's the reasoning part, to the right resolution. That's the guidance. 3 things they did, which was really powerful. 1, bootstrap as much of context as you can into this guidance so that you don't have to ask the customer the same question again and again. And they get 17 pieces of information. That may not all be filled for every customer, but that's the total package. 17 attributes of the customer at the time of the call based on the call number they're calling from and other metrics. That gets bootstrapped into the guidance system. Imagine how much context that is, and I'll show you in a second. Then the other thing they did, which was very powerful with our tool, which is a capability, is not every conversation gets resolved and concluded and case closed the first time around. Many conversations are about, well, go check your mobile phone, check your service, get back to me, or you have a payment problem, find out what's happening with your credit card organization, come back to me. Come back to me in a day, maybe 2 hours. What happens to all that context that got created in 10 minutes of phone conversation? Well, what you can do is you can pause that conversation and you can resume it. So the next agent who picks up has the entire context, not just of fields, but the conversational bits, and they pick it up from there. Really powerful. And lastly, connect it back into the core platform so you can do analytics. Their UI, this is a custom UI, the first thing I'll say, because they designed it, they wanted it to be the way they wanted it, and our platform enables not just our own UI, but also through APIs to plug into any UI that they may have. So that's the way they did it. What's interesting, I'll make 2 points here. If you look at a system like this, notice one thing. Most CRM desktop applications will take this information, which is the customer information for those of you who can read it, and spread it all over the main screen. That's typical. That's what CRM systems do for agents. That doesn't help you solve the problem. It just tells you who the customer is. And now you got to do all the processing here, which is hard. So what they've done is they've put that on the side, and this is the problem-solving space. It's about solving the customer problem. This is just context. And what that does is now takes all this context, the 17 bits of information I mentioned, bootstraps it into the screen for the agent, and the agent gets this sort of a procedural way of processing ask the next question, and based on that, the next actions that you take. And oh, by the way, there's some helpful information on the side. What this allows the agents to do is every agent can handle every type of contact. Does that sound possible? Actually, I mentioned this about 3 years ago to a Gartner analyst, and he challenged me. He said, never seen that at scale. I said, well, let's have you talk to these guys. Very unusual, but very possible because of the AI capabilities that we can apply to the problem. The last thing, or 2 other things. One, creating feedback loops in these tools is vital. That they found out. Because if you give the agents the sense of empowerment that they can contribute, that they can improve the process, and you take that feedback and within 24 hours you make sure something happens to it, then agents adopt that capability very well. And what they found was this. This is the data. This is what they did, right? They took 20,000 articles in their knowledge base, which is actually fairly typical. We go to organizations that have 100,000 articles in their knowledge base in a customer service organization. I'm like, has anyone used any of that ever? Why, we don't know. Well, what are the top 100 articles? We don't know. How often are these things updated? We don't know. So what's the point of having all that content if you don't know how it's being used? Well, we just did our job. Our job is to deliver the content. So that's the difference in looking at new capabilities like AI and knowledge, is you look at what it is that the actual operation needs. What are the guidance tools that are needed? And not worry about the 20,000 articles that you have to go update. Ran through all that, and the result was, I'm sorry, I'm going at it pretty quickly here because I want to make sure I don't go beyond my remit. Okay, these are numbers they have published. This is not 1 or 2 point improvement. This is not for a 50 agent contact center. This is for 10,000 agent contact center. At scale, they have improved their FCR by 23%. You can all do the math. This is first contact resolution, right? FCR. So reduced escalations by 23%, simple way to think about it. Net Promoter Score actually went up by 40%. They attributed half of that to this capability. The other half they kept to themselves, saying we're just smart guys, so we think it's good. It's good. I think it's a fair thing. The last thing I want to bring up is this. To me, this is a killer point, and that is your new agents can become as good as your veterans in 3 months as opposed to 6 months. That's a big change, because your average lifetime of an agent is 2 to 3 years. Maybe it's different here, but if you look at it globally, it's between 2 and 3 years. Agents change, and especially as the workforce is becoming the new workforce, it's like a McDonald's job. People walk through and get on to do other things. Now, this is the transformational bit. What I showed you was the change bit. You remember the run, change, transform? What I showed you until now is the change bit. Now, this is the transformational bit, which I thought was amazingly impressive. Because they can collect great data, because they know for every contact what is the path taken through the guidance system, every step to get to resolution or not. They have tons of relevant data. They take that and run it through regular analytics, not machine learning at this point, just to be clear. That capability they do not use here. But what they have been able to do is reduce the number of customer found problems by 5x. 5x. Because they're able to get back to the root cause of problem instantly. Every day they're able to find a new bottleneck, feed it back to the product team, and yes, the solution won't be instant, but it'll get done. That closed loop improvement is made possible by the digital and AI application. And by the way, this is not just for phone contacts, this is for chats, this is for digital contact as well. So omni-channel. And interesting, some of the other learnings they shared, not in technology, but they found it interesting, and I thought you would too, so I'm sharing it with you. Nothing to do with technology, but just adoption. Their big thing was, this was a much bigger shift than they thought. And all of you can probably appreciate it. The shift is, most people think of finding answers as search. Google, enter your keyword, get a response. But that never gives you the pathway to resolution. All it gives you is a bunch of responses, and you got to decide which one to pick. But people are used to it. We are all used to it. So we think that's the way to do things. And agents are used to it. So they had to work that to say, you are not going to get a search box anymore. You're going to get a guided conversational tool. And once agents understood the value of that through incentives, that's the carrot hanging, because they had incentives that said, if you follow this process and you hit these goals on compliance and FCR, then you get additional bonus, you get promoted, etc. So very powerful. Do we have another 5 minutes, or are we up? Okay, good. You with me? So what I'm going to do now is just give you a quick overview of the eGain application from the point of view of the demonstration that you might see in the next few sessions. And the part I want to focus on is this new digital-first desktop that we announced in version 17 middle of last year. And the reason we are so thrilled about it is that this is a place where we have brought together the 4 core capabilities of our platform. All the digital tools, the AI capability, the knowledge capability, and the analytics capability. All four we brought together into this desktop. And you'll see how that makes the life of the agent better. Remember the ABC? To us, that was the missing bit, the A part. And so we really focused on how to make the life of the agent better, because if the agent can do the job better, then the customer benefits. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do self-service. Self-service is a huge part of this whole equation. But most of the money spent in customer service organizations today, most of it, is around agents. So if you can optimize that, you can get tremendous benefits. The first one I want to point out is we built out this new look that Ricardo here, one of my colleagues, he's going to walk you through in the demonstration. The idea is to have what I'd call a consistent look and feel for all interaction types, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a chat, whether it's social media, whether it is emails, whatever it is, the interaction looks similar. However, the interface adapts to the task at hand, and you'll see how that changes. And you can manage omni-channel agent availability across. Right? The other part which is interesting and we think is exciting is the fact that the omni-channel, when we say omni-channel, we mean in one interaction you could have a phone call going with the agent and have a co-browse session between the agent and the customer during the same call. Or you could be on chat or a video call with a customer and be able to see what they are looking at on their website or potentially on a mobile responsive page. That omni-channel experience is where we think the market is going. Remember the Gartner, earlier Gartner comment about the fact that 70+% of all interactions are going to be enabled by new experience and digital technologies? That's what I mean by that. Guidance through the entire process. To us, that's fundamental, because the new generation doesn't want a model of throwing information at them and figuring out what to do. So we constantly guide them using the capability, for instance, that you saw with EE, but it is built into our desktop. So you take all that context of the customer and the activity, and you bootstrap it. You dip into third-party systems, you get all the information. And the level of guidance can change based on the proficiency of the agent. And this is something really important, what we found, and we've always been very, very proud of this, is when you try to apply these capabilities in large customer service organizations, you have different types of agents. Some agents are very good at solving, let's say, returns problems. Some agents are really good at solving billing problems, and some are really good at solving retention problems. Now, when you apply this sort of tool to say, we'll guide you, the ones who are very good at retention, let's say, I don't want to use this because I know it here. I can do it much faster. And everyone has the same attitude for some part of your business process. The trick is to adjust the experience depending on the proficiency of the agent. So what our tool does is it recognizes if you believe that an agent is proficient in returns, then when the returns calls come in or the contacts come in, this guidance will be different for that person versus for a novice agent for the same type of returns calls. You see? So it's a dynamic way of adjusting the guidance depending on the proficiency of the agents. Embedding our capability both ways, taking third-party solutions and embedding it inside us so that we can create a unified view, or the other way, us embedding some of our capabilities, because we acknowledge that there will be other desktops in the environment. We can tear away sections of our desktop and embed it seamlessly into other parties as well with context. And finally, collaboration. This is an area where we have been sort of leaders in this area because we have learned, delivering this sort of capability over the years, that agents, no matter how much you try to give them tools, sometimes they just want to check with their fellow agents. They just want to confirm. Yes, this tool is guiding me, but I'd like to get a second opinion, if you will, because it's an important customer. We make it really easy for them to digitally collaborate. And they can take the existing context and share it with their fellow agents digitally based on availability of agents. And that becomes a very powerful place for us to learn as to what are the conversations going on inside the contact center. Now we capture that as big data. We can use that to learn. So I'll leave you with this final comment. New experiences in the digital world are going to be increasingly omnichannel. It's not just one way. It's not just the phone. It's not just the mobile app. It's not just the website. It's going to be all of the above. So whatever you are delivering to your customers, you have to stay connected across those. And that, to us, is the fundamental insight. Whether you're introducing new chatbot, machine learning, make sure they all stay connected to your core capabilities. With that, thank you very much. Kietos.